Hello and welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. So, Graham, I think it's about time we got you some life coaching.
I think I might be beyond it, but then again, we've got the expert with us today. This is Greg Styan, and he's going to talk to us about being a life coach for men. Now, there might be men that's beyond the pale, so therefore you and me are probably ruled out, Kevin, or at least I will be. But there'll be others that he can actually help. Greg, welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast.
Kevin and Graham, thank you very much for having me on. It's a real privilege. I've been listening to the show as well, so yeah, I'm a real big fan. So thanks so much for having me on.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. You've had a really varied life. You were just saying how because you help coach a young football team, don't you?
Yeah, I do that in my sort of spare time to sort of keep me sane, if you like, and it just sort of leads into the coaching and the advice I try to provide other people as well, is to keep yourself happy, pursue your interests, and ultimately that makes you more productive, so.
And do you get a lot of clients on the touchline screaming at their kids to, do this or do that or do the other? So then you can sort of say, well, look, hold on a minute. I think you need a bit of coaching from me. Never mind the other way around. Or is that not an issue?
No, I think that's about right. I think every parent thinks they're a coach anyway, don't they? They always want the best for their children. But for me, what's most interesting about it as they get older, the more and more competitive the parents get, but I absolutely love it, and it's one of the hobbies that I pursue, and it's something that I always try. I think it's really important for men to have a hobby in general, and I think that's just something that I've decided to pursue in my spare time, and I absolutely love it.
And you used to live in Poole near Bournemouth, and you knew somebody that Kevin Appleby is quite fond of nowadays.
Yeah. Well, Poole's as you know, Poole's a fantastic place to grow up in. I absolutely loved it. But for me, I remember leaving home at 18, moving to Plymouth University to play football. I was in such a shock. Wow. I didn't realize just how privileged I was to sort of grow up there. And that, like I said, that leads me into my coaching as well. All these experiences that I've had enables me to give some real sort of sound and solid advice.
But you met Eddie Howe.
Absolutely.
Who's now he's got the gig at Newcastle United. So
yeah, and he's got a fantastic story. He had to finish playing football at 27 through injury. He was an England under-21 player. Bournemouth were given a point deduction. He was thrown in the deep end, transfer embargo, the lot, and he managed to keep him up. So yeah, he's a real role model. What a fantastic guy. And I'm over the moon that he's doing really well at Newcastle.
And this is the fantastic thing about Eddie Howe. Okay, we've got a lot of money as a football club.
Yeah.
But what has impressed me so much is how he's taken existing players, some of whom were at the point of getting booed by the fans quite a bit, and he's turned them into world-class performers.
Yeah, he's so grounded as well, I think, with Eddie. And he sticks to his principles. At Bournemouth, it was such an attacking style of football, and I see he's taken that to Newcastle as well. But yeah, I mean, everyone in Bournemouth absolutely loves him for the heroic avoiding relegation, when they were at the points deduction and taking them to the Premier League. Yeah, he's just a fantastic guy.
My wife and I often go down and spend a little bit of time in Bournemouth, and we'll walk from where we are in Bournemouth over to Poole. And there's a lovely cafe kind of halfway, and I'm struggling to remember what it is, but it's
Cafe Shore, maybe. Yeah, I think I know the one. That's amazing.
But honestly, it's absolute. It's such a delightful place. And I mean, if you've come from there, then you'll know that anyway. But we love Bournemouth and Poole. We just think it's a wonderful part of the country. But we should really talk about being a life coach. So you're a life coach. First of all, I don't know what one of those is really. So tell us a little bit what a life coach is.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, for me, throughout my whole career, I've sort of fell into things, whether you call it fate or luck or perseverance, I don't know, but doors have always sort of opened, and this has been an avenue that sort of opened up to me. Funny enough, since COVID, before COVID, I had these crazy jobs, the Russians used to call it a governor, where I was sort of responsible for their families, and Russian billionaires and Chinese. And before that, I was a head of PE in Hackney. And before that, I was a wannabe football player. And it all sort of like led me to the stage that I'm in now. You know, a failed football career because of an injury, led me into PE teaching, led me to being a head of PE, led me into mentoring, to coaching, to working for VIPs, and then led me into this sort of route that I'm in now. And COVID, something that I'd really like to speak to you guys is happened to has had a huge change on the workplace in men at CEO and executive level in particular, I think. And that's obviously led me into a path where all the experiences that I've had, I can really help in shape men. Over the last, I've coached for a long time, but over the last 2 years, I've done an abundance of courses, NLP, counseling, nutrition, personal training, all this sort of stuff to try and be the best coach that I can be. And it's amazing the results that can be gained. But if you'd like, I'd like to, it's a really interesting discussion of what COVID did to men. I think, men who are CEO and executive level in particular. It's not talked about, but it's something that I've really seen. I'm not sure what you guys have seen.
Well, before you get into that, just sort of give us a sort of a 2-minute. Which, if I said to you, what is a life coach?
Yeah,
it might be obvious, but then again, people have various views about coaching lives. So, but what is it that you actually? How do you intervene with people?
Okay. I'll tell you what, you had a really interesting chat with Anya the other day, who's a sales coach. Yeah. And that's all about the workplace and being more productive in the sales place. I'd say for me, I focus on the person before they go into sales. So that person generally needs help with life. And for me, the biggest aspect of that is achieving a work-life balance and someone being, to put it as simple as just to being comfortable in their own skin. Which, you had a great chat with Tony Smith about mental health. Yeah. And I actually heard you guys talk about, one of you guys talked about waking up in the middle of the night with a piece of paper and structuring something out. And that's where I would step in and I would give, hopefully some sound advice of how to get there. But you'd be really surprised of what people come to me, most of these guys on face value look incredibly happy. They look like they have everything, the salary, the house, the family. But deep down, there's something missing, something that they feel unfulfilled in, And I've actually asked, I've personally asked some of the clients that I'm working with at the moment whether they don't mind me sharing one or two of their stories, because it's really interesting, and I think that what COVID did in particular is people had time at home, didn't they? They were able to spend time with their families and they were able to do stuff which they enjoyed. It could be golf, could be painting, could be collecting. And then they go back to work. The UK has the biggest average working week, 42 hours, I think we work at. And I think, when you look at most people probably do 50 to 60 a week, they get lost and they lose their authentic self, and I work with a guy at the moment and he wants to look a certain way, and I step in and say, look, it's probably unachievable. So we set targets which are achievable, which makes him happy, and by looking at his timetable and what he does in his schedule, we try to fit more golf into his schedule, more opportunities to fit with his, more opportunities to spend time with children. And the short-term goals would be, let's get your driver in your golf bag from 250 to 275, and let's aim to spend 2 days a week with the children and watch your child's football game on a Sunday, instead of trying to achieve something which is unrealistic like a six-pack or So our life coaches generally, I would say, I'm a life navigator, and weirdly, like I said, I've fallen into these areas where I've managed to watch a lot of people, whether it's head teachers, whether I was a teacher or some of these families that I work with, and I've managed to pick up hints and tips alongside some of the courses that I've done over the year. Hopefully, like I said, to give some real sort of sound advice. But it's a really interesting area at the moment. It's definitely developing more so. Okay, more so at the moment.
Take us then back to this area of COVID. So what's it?
Yep.
3 years ago. I mean, we basically we've had a fair bit to go through as a world. But what was it that men in particular, in senior positions, what was wrong with them? Well, so what was the problem that presented to you as a life coach? What have you learned from that?
But that's a really, really good question. I'm someone that likes to look at stats. I'm statistical by nature. And there was a study recently released that, it's a US study, but it was like 1,400 CEOs have stepped down between January and September. It's a 50% increase, and I think, I talked about the working week. I think they did a survey across the whole UK, and 31% of people working in the UK are unhappy with their work-life balance. 57%.
Sorry, let me just break into that. Yeah. What you just said was amazing. I
absolutely.
Are you saying that in this year, 2023, yeah, as we're recording this, of the people that were surveyed, virtually half of CEOs, half of them have stepped down?
Yeah, no, this is an amazing stat. So this is a US stat. So I have clients in the USA as well. So wow. They did this survey in 2002, and they've done the same survey again in 2023. Right. And it's a 50% increase in CEOs stepping down between January and September 2023 right. to 2002. And the stats they really scream out of you. Like I said, we talked about the UK having the largest average working week at 42 hours. Yeah. 31% of UK workers feel they have an unequal work-life balance. 50% of UK workers think about changing their jobs to achieve a greater work-life balance. But the sort of clientele that I'm trying to work with, this CEO and executive level, 67% of UK CEO and executive level workers in this country actively look to change their job or their life to achieve a greater work-life balance. It's incredible. And I openly feel that it was COVID that set something off in your head.
What's the reasoning behind that then? Why do you? I think that I can understand my mind's going in a particular direction, but what's your thinking as to why that's triggered this increase in desire for a work-life balance?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think so many people are working from home, now, and that offers something else as well. I work with someone who considers himself. I've openly asked whether I can talk about them. He openly considers himself a digital nomad. So that means someone who works from their laptop and they travel around the world and they can only spend 90 days in the country. And it looks incredible. On the outside of it, you think, wow, you look at their social media channels, like, wow, this guy's got the best life. But deep down, they're really missing something. And that, remember, in that 2002 survey that we talked about, that job would have been in the workplace and they'd have had a lot more rounded life. That's just one aspect. But what I think COVID did, and the lockdowns that we had in this country, and they were very different to what I was in America for one of the lockdowns as well. And when I come back, the lockdown here was completely different. People spent time at home. They spent time with their loved ones. They spent time doing their hobbies, whether it was golf. I talked about the guy that I'm working with, and instead of aiming towards a six-pack, we're aiming at getting more yards on his driver, and that makes him happy. And ultimately, he becomes more productive. And I've got a great story of a trader that I'm working with at the moment and working with his stress levels and stuff as well. But I think COVID made people realize that there was more to life than work. And something resonated with me with a chat you had with Anya recently. And you talked about, instead of fitting as many bums on seats, to make sure that the people that were sat on the seats needed to be there and it was worthwhile. And I think that is hitting home, isn't it? Is that people are just starting to realize that we all need to work. We all have targets, we all have goals, things we want to achieve. But there's more to life than just running yourself into the ground. And, if you look at the stats, that's what's happened. And I think COVID allowed people to reflect and to think and to have a different life.
Is it, in a way, Kevin, you and I have both stepped out of the corporate rat race in a way and become the version of ourselves that we wanted us to become, up to a point anyway. So, so in a way, we kind of elected ourselves out of that corporate rat race. And there were so many frustrations. But for those people who were still there, when it came to COVID, all of a sudden they had this buffer and they hit this buffer and then they had a different life. So what you're really saying is that they kind of had a good peek at what were the other potential life they might have. So Absolutely. When they've come back, they've had this cognitive dissonance, if you like. There's something in their brain saying it's not really right for me. I've got to do something about it. And this is where you're coming in, isn't it?
Yeah, and like I said, what I openly tell people is look, you can, if you go about it the right way, I think there's a way to achieve both. There's a way to achieve the goals that you want as long as they're specific and measurable and attainable. Like I said, we talked about the guy with the six pack or the guy, who wanted to buy a third property or whatever. Some of them aren't, you got to set your targets sensible.
Yeah.
But I openly speak to people who maybe thinking about leaving to other jobs, which gives them more time. But I do think, ultimately my aim with clients is to try and get them to achieve both. But it just goes to show there's more to life, where you can achieve what the goals that you set yourself out for, but you can do it being happy, like watching Newcastle play, making sure that you don't miss them in the Champions League.
Greg,
that would be
there's something wrong with you there. That wouldn't make you happy. But no. Well, it might. Well, I don't know, Kevin. Would it make you happy if you were watching Newcastle every other weekend?
Seem to be doing that at the minute, and nearly every game seems to be on telly this season, which is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah. But go on, sorry, Kevin.
No, there's something for me here, Greg. That's one of the differences. Is I think we're moving away from work being somewhere you go to work being something you do.
Yeah,
and you're talking about that 42-hour week or whatever it is. That's based around you work Monday to Friday, 8:30 till 5, 6, whatever. You commute there, you commute back. And there's that block of what we call in between those two commutes is called work. Yeah. How much actual productive stuff that we do in those hours, well, that's debatable. But you're moving to a position that's, well, certainly for me, I'm at home all the time. The last time I was actually on client site was right at just after lockdown, but my life changed completely because of COVID and what was happening work-wise. But there's still this thing that I suppose where I come unstuck is there's still at the back of my mind, it's supposed to be a 40-hour week. And is there a case that we need a mental shift? Because you're at home all the time, you're talking to your laptop, you're doing stuff.
Yeah.
You're in the office, you'd be chatting to folk, you'd be making a cup of coffee, you'd be doing other things. A lot of the 40 hours wouldn't be pure productive, get stuff done time.
No.
And that for me is probably the biggest mental problem to get around. That if I'm not sitting in front of a screen, I feel guilty.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
He needs your help, Greg.
Yeah. And this is where I come in with people, and we have a very honest and frank discussion. I'll say, what do you want to achieve? What do you want your life to look like? And then we'll sit down and we'll set goals and targets behind that, and setting a timetable and blocking yourself out, whether it's work, family time, Newcastle United, is important, I think. And that's what we're talking about there. You said about you feeling guilty about you not doing a certain amount of time. And that's just a mindset shift, isn't it? Where you've got to think, actually, hang on, I've got to get from A to B. Can I get from A to B taking a faster route than I can that 40-hour week? Absolutely. And then in that gap, can you fit in time to play golf? Can you fit in time to, catch up on your favorite Netflix series or whatever it is, or walk your dog? It's all this sort of stuff that helps, and for me, one of the biggest aspects is helping men become a lot more productive as well, achieve better results. And there's so many, like life hacks to get there, whether it's sleep or diet. There's a whole world of information out there, and that scope is changing a lot as well. Traditionally, let's say we've had a working week of, Monday to Friday, 9 till 5. Recently, it seemed like a lot of workplaces are going 4 days a week. And we are, if you look at what studies are doing in other countries and offering opportunities in the day for exercises or own pursuits or whatever it is, I think that will change the scope of mental health, and being more productive and being happy in the workplace is going to change a lot.
Why? So I was just thinking, given that those are the impacts of COVID, they haven't just happened to men.
No, they haven't.
But you've chosen that that's going to be your area of focus.
It's just been a calling. I'm not going to lie. Like through my whole life, even when I was a teacher, I seem to only work with boys. That's just what's happened. And I for me, this isn't a statement or a fact. Maybe guys find it easy to speak to guys personally. That would be my approach with it. But it's not a sexist thing or anything like that. It's just been the way it's been. But I wouldn't,
But do they present in a different? I mean, well, I don't know if you're not doing both. It's a bit difficult to say, I guess. But presumably, men, when you get to know them, they'll open up with you pretty quickly because you'll have techniques to get that to happen. But or is it sometimes a bit of a slow burn that they'll take a few sessions before they actually tell you anything that's valuable?
Well, I think they've opened themselves up straight away by simply approaching me. For years I worked by word of mouth, and now it's all my social media channels. I think it's a big, a cry for help's a big statement. That's a tough way to put it, but I think they want to find help now, and I think that guys are changing a little bit as well with that. It's not seen as such a sin anymore, is it, to ask for help? But it's such an interesting world. It really is. And I think COVID, but I think social media and unrealistic expectations set something as well. The saying about keeping up with the Joneses, stuff like that. I mean, it's really unrealistic. You've got to set yourself role models, clear targets, and make them measurable as well. Make them achievable. And once you do achieve them, really, really celebrate it. And I think that's what I try to get across.
Well, I've got views about the Kevin, because this isn't the first time you've mentioned the fact that you feel almost obligated, because you run a company, don't you, Kevin? So basically, you feel obligated to be there. Now, I know that you'll walk the dog. For me, for me, it's the 10,000 steps.
Yeah,
and that's, I don't know, an hour and a half or so. By the time I've done the steps, etc., talked to the farmer, fed the farmer's dog, but basically it's that kind of, but it's a routine, and I can listen to people I want to listen to on the way around, so I can educate myself during that time. I'm getting exercise, I feel a lot happier, and then I start work. But work doesn't, for me, that's the right way. I want to invest in myself, and then I will start to work on the things that I've got on my action for that day. So for me, that's the way I'm coping with the exercise, the mental thing, all that kind of stuff. And I no longer, although I do have a sympathy with Kevin, because for years we did what Kevin was just describing for himself. We all did that. But now, running my own show, if I'm not there every single minute, it doesn't mean to say I'm going to earn any less. Yeah, it doesn't mean to say my earnings are going to drop. I'm just going to be more focused on the things that I really want to do to keep my earnings at a certain level. So if that's for me, that's the way I kind of do it. But it's late on. We're both in our 60s now. So, maybe if I could have done this when I was, say, I don't know, mid-40s, it would have been I'd have been a different me.
That's really interesting, Graham. It's good to know. It's positive to see you've taken those steps. You talked about getting up early in the morning and listening to your podcast and keeping yourself healthy and your 10,000 steps. The question I would come to you with, I'd see, like, where did you get that advice from? And that's openly looking at role models and looking for where that good information is, and that's advice, isn't it? And that's what a life coach leads into. And the 10,000 steps is a measurable target.
Yeah,
something that you give yourself a pat on the back for if you achieve it.
It's on the iPhone. I'm on a sequence at the moment. I feel like I've got ADHD or something. You know what I mean? So I have to get to a certain number of consecutive days. So hopefully I'll get there. But
that's what ultimately gets you through and keeps you going, isn't it? Is the target that you've set yourself, and that's fantastic. Like you running a podcast like this, and it's so helpful to business, people in business and myself and others. It's fantastic. And
well, yeah, we love. This is Kevin and I giving back. I mean, Kevin plagued me for a little while to start this podcast, and he's waiting to jump in at the moment, aren't you,
Kevin? Yeah, and that was one of those things that we just made a decision. We've talked about this long enough. Let's just turn the microphones on and record something. And I think sometimes you just got to make that first step.
Good point.
But there's something about a habit. We've recorded at 3:00 on a Thursday afternoon for now as long as we can remember. Okay, there've been some variations. There've been sometimes because of work commitments that I've moved it to be recording on a Friday instead of a Thursday. Occasionally we've put in 2 slots in a day because we've got to get some extra shows in the bag because we're literally recording today to issue something tomorrow. But no, it's about habit. It's about doing it and doing it regularly if you want it. But I actually want to look back, Greg, and talk to you again a little bit about how you go about making people productive. If the thing is feeling trapped by a 40, 45-hour week, whatever it is, how, say somebody wants to move to that situation that they don't work Fridays. How do you go about getting them to be just as productive, or perhaps even more productive, but in a shorter time window?
It's a very, very good question. Okay, so initially, like I said, I get approached, and that's the cry for help. The asking for help if we're talking, and then I have a discovery call. A bit like what we're doing today, where we're just having an open discussion about what targets they want to set, what goals they're interested in, what they want their life to look like. So you've just said to me about maybe working less, maybe having a day off, maybe pursuing something else. All I would say to them straight away is there's nothing that's a quick fix. This all takes time. So that's I know it says it's me trying to sell a block booking, but that's not quite the point. What I need to see is a timetable, and in that timetable, I need to see what time you get up, what time you go to sleep, when you're having caffeine, what your working week looks like, how many hours you're on your phone, how many hours you're getting sleep. All of that is what adds to being productive or not productive. Like I said, I've openly talked to some of my clients about some of the advice that I can give, and I'm happy to talk about a guy who's a trader, if you like, and he's just stressed out of his mind dealing with mega money trades, if you like. And one of the real things that we looked at from his timetable was, I was amazed at his caffeine intake and how that must have affected his judgment. Straight away, you just change that. You wake up an hour earlier. I know there's a big trend for the moment for this 5 a.m. club, which I imagine you've seen. But if you think about it, if you delay your caffeine intake by an hour and a half and drink it with water, your mind's going to be so much more unclouded. There's a lot there with drinking bottled water and fluoride and all this sort of stuff as well. Going on to your question there about judgment and time and stuff. So going from looking at a timetable in a working week, I would then openly suggest about, can we cut this down? Can we make this longer? Could you get up earlier? Could you go into work 20 minutes earlier here? And it's just, like I say, it's a guided process and one that goes both ways as well. And you'd be amazed how many people say, oh, I can't make that work. And I'll be like, well, you're the CEO. Of course you can make it work. It's your life. And one of the best advices I got, you only get one of those lives. So make it count. If you want to have a day off, to spend more time on the golf course, then make it happen. Get up earlier, spend an hour later in the office on that day, cut your work break, cut your lunch break down on that time, or maybe, set times or days of what you're going to do precise things. So yeah, that's and it's the timetable is in the diary is important. I think that's more and more important now. You talked about your using your phone for tracking your steps.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff's crucial, I think, now. So making sure that you give yourself the amount of time to be able to.
I was on my way round. I end up on the side. I'm going to say on the side of the Leeds Liverpool Canal, Kevin. So there's it stretches from Leeds to Liverpool. I'm nearer the Leeds end, thank God. But basically, what when I'm walking along there, I'm listening to invariably at the moment Dan Kennedy, and Kennedy is famous for making himself unavailable to people, making himself deliberately, I'm going to be difficult to deal with. If you turn up 5 minutes late for an appointment more than 2 or 3 times, you're sacked as a client. So it's that. So in other words, he trains people to be to be his type of client. So in other words, he has certain rules that enables him to choose the type of clients and then train them to behave with him. And I'm thinking about, your clients who are saying, oh, I'm not really sure if I can do that. Well, in a way, if they were able to sort of block access to themselves, and he's famous for saying, well, the only way you're going to get a message to me is by sending me a fax. Now, it doesn't actually go to him. It goes to his secretary on the other side of America. And then she puts it in a box and sends the box to him every week. And then he looks at it. So by the time he looks at something that's come via fax, it might be a week, maybe 2 weeks later. But that's the way he deals with, shall we say, pressure. Now, what happens with him is that by the way, he doesn't have a phone, or he doesn't have a phone that he does have a phone, but he doesn't circulate the number. And in other words, he has a huge amount of time that's not eaten into by interruptions. That's one of the reasons I'm not too keen on notifications, because notifications, I see it with my millennial sons that the phone's going off every who's that? And it's a notification. And I refuse to have notifications on my phone because basically it's some other weirdness affecting my time. And I object to that. There's a bit of Kennedy in me, if you like. And I think that's the thing that I think maybe you might say, well, that's very selfish, but I don't think so.
I agree.
If you're the CEO, then you might want to do more of that and less of allowing people having an open door to yourself.
That's it. I absolutely agree. And you're talking about these life hacks, aren't you? Openly. I think one of the best advice I give to people is make sure you've got 2 email addresses. One for your personal life, and definitely one. Never combine them. And you openly talked about notifications. Have 2 phones and keep one purely for work hours, and that's it. And that's those little life hacks that makes it. But also uncloud your mind. So when you're playing golf, or you're out walking, you're only concentrating on what's in front of you, and that's your time. That's your time to unwind, and then be more productive when you go back.
How do you go from just about 200 yards drive to 300 yards? I find that almost impossible. But I'm a sort of is it military golfer? Left, right, sort of all the way down the cut. I just I find it quite difficult, but I could probably do with a decent golf coach. Anyway,
hey Graham, the answer to that is not a life coach. You want to go and have a few lessons with the professional at the golf course.
Well, maybe, yeah. Kevin and I have played golf together, but I think you beat me badly, didn't you? But anyway, by and by. So you help people with these life hacks, with these. I guess a lot of it is to do with time management, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's it. Being your authentic self, making sure that you're pursuing your own dreams, whether that's professional, personal, and that means having time. And that means being tight. You said about saying no. And the fax machine idea is great. I'm going to use that. Actually, I think that's fantastic. But it's giving yourself
fax machines is
time. That's a really good idea. I'm going to manipulate that into my own sort of practice, I think. But yeah, it's a really good idea just to set more time for yourself, to enjoy yourself. But one of the things you guys have all talked about, which is really interesting, is your own forms of therapy. You talked about going on walks, we talked about golf, we talked about Newcastle United or whatever it is. But that's all, when you think about it, for a guy in particular, I consider that your own therapy form. Meditation, whatever it might be, but it's to clear your mind and to enjoy yourself, realize that there's more to life than work. But what is really fascinating for me is the happier you make these people, the greater work life you give them. Ultimately, literally 99 times out of 100, they become a lot more productive. They make better decisions in the workplace. They're less stressed. They enjoy it more. And they're not that group of people who are considering handing in their resignations or, looking for, because they've worked so hard to get there, these people as well. They've done so well to get there.
The course that I was listening to from Kennedy was it was quite interesting because it was a long course. But basically, I was listening to it today, and one of the parts of the course that we're talking about was the where you sat on the chair, and it's like there's 20 people around you, and you're sort of talking these things through. And this guy got up, and his business was all about, this is back in before Obama became president, so early 2000s, 2004, 5, that kind of idea. And basically, this guy used to help people get wives from the sort of Asian sort of Thai wives and so forth.
Yeah,
very beautiful, educated, all that kind of stuff. And he would make the introduction for people in America, and he was charging $395, and he'd do a lot of things for that. And of course, what happened is he sat on the chair telling people this, and guess what happened? They were screaming at him saying, $395? And so, they all were saying, increase your price. And basically, in fairness, given that it was an arbitrary thing anyway, Kennedy said, just put a 0 on it.
Wow.
And of course, what happened is nothing happened to his response rate. So, the 100 customers, whatever it was, the number of customers that he had became the number of customers he had. But basically, he just had people prepared to pay. Because if you think about it, it wasn't just a date. It was a wife.
Yeah.
I hope she's not in earshot, but how much would you pay to have met your life partner if that was the route you were going to take? $395, fair enough, or $3,950. So basically, I think there's an issue there, and this is a roundabout way of saying, how on earth do you price your services?
Very good question. Well, I tend to run sort of 3 packages, if you like. A 6-week package, which is a short-term fix.
Right.
I call it shift it, sort it, and then I have a very tailored one, which I keep that to myself, if you like. And that's an ongoing thing where I might work with clients for 12 months, even far longer than that. So yeah, it depends. For me, it's all about what the goals and the expectations are. One of the things I get asked about a lot is aiming for a job promotion, things like that, being in the best possible shape or the best possible mindset for whatever it might be. But yeah, you said something really interesting about that chat you just said then. It reminded me of Tony Robbins, like the most famous life coach, if you like. And if you watch his business talks, whatever, he says something very similar to that, where they've got clients, these people, but maybe they've not, maybe they don't make enough money, or they're not satisfied, and he'll say, yeah, let's put a 0 on it. And, you'll be shocked. But ultimately it comes in believing yourself.
Yeah,
believing that what you're putting there is right, being proud of your services and whatever, and that's mindset, and that's coached as well, isn't it? Is being proud of what you're putting out there.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Greg, because it is actually about a mindset, isn't it? Pricing, because whatever your price is, and in this particular guy's business, who was it? His father who had the business before, who said, "Oh, we can't price any more than that." Well, what about all these other people doing this? Price is what you set, not nobody else. That's the one thing you can set. You can set your price at whatever you want. The issue then is with that much more money, and there's lots of other stories about this, but with the extra money, you can make the service that much more engaging, and also advertise it to the right kind of people with more money to do that and all that. There's lots of reasons why you'd want to think about pricing as a real strategy. But when it comes to life coaching, it's how much. It's just that when you came on and we're talking about life coaching, I was thinking about this guy trying to find men, not just a female sort of short-term partner, but a wife.
Yeah. Do you know what's really interesting though? You talk about this guy. I openly talk about the show I did with Anya and the one with Tony. I feel they're all interlinked in some way. Everyone finds their own little avenue in life. Yeah. Whether you fall into it or you trip into it, or you learn to get there and then you sort of follow it through. And I think it's just really, really interesting. But it's fascinating some of the stories that people come to me with in what they want to achieve, or and what you talked about, is if you're selling your course at more money, you can have less clients. If you've got less clients, it's less stress, greater work-life balance, more productive, a better service. So that's it there in a nutshell.
You might not have less clients. You just might have more profitable ones. It's just that,
absolutely.
But at the end of the day, you're almost certainly going to be more happy. But
absolutely.
That said, I just think that the whole idea of you being, I love the fact that you've listened to previous episodes and you've referenced them in a really acute way, and that makes me think you'll be a really good coach. Because you've obviously listened to the not only to what was said, but the context and all the rest of that, and then you're applying that. That's a real skill, like you said. You've done nutrition and all kinds of NLP. I mean, those are the words you use, aren't it? I'm probably an expert in NLP. Somebody doing Newcastle Premier League or something, isn't it? I don't know what.
Yeah, it's just brain therapy. Along with meditation or yoga or whatever it might be. It's a whole world out there of unfogging your mind, I would say. And like I said, becoming more productive. I've got a great stat, like one I was talking to one of my clients the other day. If you look at the 2020 Olympic 100-meter final, right, there's 3 guys, right? First, second, third. There's 1 second difference between first and last. 1 second. So it's nothing, right? 100-meter final. The top 3 people are all 26 years old. Okay, so they're all the same. So they've had the same amount of time to train, to practice, to get themselves into that position to be challenging for a gold medal. The first place was 9.80. The second place was 9.84. And the third place was 9.89. So there was no difference. So then I would say that there's fine margins, such fine margins, whether it's football in Newcastle United, whether it's 100 meters, whether it's going for a job promotion, whether it's Anya talking to her clients, or, Tony with his mental health story.
Yeah.
And for me, it's those fine margins that I help make smaller with little hacks, like you're talking about, achieving 10,000 steps a day, making you think you've achieved something positive. Yeah. You take that into your life. You become happier. You take that into the workplace. You're much more productive, and you ultimately achieve more. And that's where I'm at the moment, and that's the sort of service that I try to sell.
I can imagine people are going to love working with you, Greg. You have a really good nature. I don't know whether that's because you were born or you were brought up on the south coast. I don't know.
Maybe southern softy.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, at the end of no, seriously, you probably don't like Leeds fans down in Bournemouth. Because I remember in 1989 we came.
I'm going to Leeds in December to see Noel Gallagher. I've actually never been, but I'm really looking forward to it.
It's a bit like Bournemouth in a way, no, it's not. No,
Bournemouth without the nice bits.
Yeah, actually, I think you'll thoroughly enjoy it, because we love Bournemouth. We absolutely love it, but seriously, I think you'll enjoy yourself up there. And
what I haven't told you is I live in Essex now, and I can hear you with the cliches. I can hear the cliches there. And it's great. It's really not. I lived in the city for 5 years, and as much as I loved it, I absolutely hated it all at the same time. For lots of these reasons that I'm talking about, a commute was terrible. The generally feeling of just being busy all the time, not sleeping. I moved 45 minutes out of the city into the countryside. I'm a completely different person. It's such an interesting way to look at it, But no, I'm really looking forward to my trip to Leeds. And one thing I'd say about Northern, I've got friends that are Northern as well. I find them so much more friendly. They're the friendliest people.
Well, I think people are friendly all over. But having said that, I think sometimes there's a greater inclination that when you go to the north, people will talk to you. And I know when I've on my trips to London sometimes, and you make a casual aside to somebody, they think. They start running away from you because
absolutely
you can't be talking to us. We've got our own world to live in a way, and you're a threat. I don't know who you are, and whereas maybe it's because we just don't have that many people relatively. I don't know. For me, it's a nice thing that the North are accredited with, but I think a lot people generally generally are good. But you make them better, don't you? I think that's your thing. That's your shtick.
That's what I would say. That's it. And like I said, the best way I can say it is looking at Anya's show. It was a great show. I really enjoyed it. And she talks about the sales part, what people can do in sales. So I'd say I'd look at the people before the sales to make them more productive in sales. And I'd say that's where I'm at. And it's a niche that I've sort of created for myself. And I thoroughly enjoy it. It's like solving any problem. It's such a challenge. And I absolutely love it.
Well, Greg, you've been an absolutely first-class guest on the Next 100 Days podcast. Thanks for joining us.
So, Graham, fascinating conversation.
Yeah, I mean, life coaching is one of those things that if you're in a stressed place in your life, not quite knowing what to do, and you're a bloke, here's somebody who can help you. He's had a fascinating life working with very, very high net worth individuals, well-known people, as a governor and all kinds of things. And he's been a coach, and now he's obviously built a range of services from nutrition to NLP to coaching. And then he's got a lot of sensible advice that he can help people, and not only that, but real client experience that he can help people with their issues. So I think Greg's a real opportunity for people who might be in that sort of fug of a position.
Yeah, the thing that occurs to me, Graham, is a lot of this stress comes from following a set of rules that say you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to do the other.
Yeah,
and having somebody like Greg that challenges it, and exactly where did that rule come from? And you realize that nowhere did that rule come from other than your own head.
Well, sometimes, if you think about it, you corporate rules. We both worked for corporates, large corporates, small corporates, and they kind of followed each other. And there was a work week, and there was an expectation, particularly as you went up the greasy pole and so forth, that you tend to do a little bit more work, or whatever responsibility meant more time or availability and all the rest of that. It crucifies me that people out there, including my own children, are having to be available in their own time for people because of worldwide time differences. Two of my children work for American companies, so when they're at work, they basically almost expect you as a Brit who's finished to be at work.
Yeah, this is a pressure we're seeing more and more in Grow CFOs. We're getting more and more American members. It's why, if we're running workshops or live courses, we tend not to start anything before 4 p.m.
No, the other thing
get to though in that situation is the mindset that says, do I need to be in the office at 9 o'clock in the morning? No, I don't.
No, but it's the classic sort of London and the North thing. Anybody living in the North will realise that it's a lot further to London. It's a lot further to the north from London than it is from the north to London, because basically we're expected to get there for a time that suits them, which is 9 or 10.
I've had an entire consulting career around that. You're on a client that's in the south. You're expected to be there 10 a.m. latest.
Yeah.
I remember whereas DWP in Newcastle, when most of the consulting team were coming up from London, you'd be lucky if you saw them on a Monday morning before 12 o'clock.
Yeah, well, there you are. And it's that kind of mental thinking. But I think the rules, as it were, are set by other people. And my advice, as much as you can, and as much as you're able, don't follow them. Don't follow other people's rules. When it says one way, it doesn't say one way, including you, Graham Arrowsmith. It just says one way. So basically, I think there are certain things in life that you might be advised to follow, for your own safety. But there are certain rules that don't make sense. And I would say that Greg's the kind of bloke who's going to help you figure out which are the ones are going to give you a better life balance. And you know what, Kevin, it's been another really interesting podcast today. I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
And I've still been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.